Hi there and welcome to Power Play. I'm Vashi Kapelos in Ottawa on this Wednesday. The House of Commons isn't sitting this week, but there is no shortage of political action tonight. A third MP crosses the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals.
I reached out to the Prime Minister's office and will be joining his caucus tonight.
Alberta MP Matt Jeneroux has crossed the floor to the Liberals just a few months after saying he was leaving politics altogether. That makes 3 MPs who have now left the Conservatives for the government. We're going to dig into what it all means for Canada's electoral landscape throughout the show. First, with a special edition of our strategy session, Scott Reid, Kathleen Monk, and James Moore will be here. Then I'll go one-on-one with Prime Minister Mark Carney's Parliamentary Secretary, Rachel Van Duyn. And our front bench is also standing by to weigh in. Sharon Carr, Jamie Ellerton, Sebastian Skamsky, and Laura D'Angelo will all be here a little bit later on in the show. First, though.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome to the government team. It's a great honor to be on the same team as you.
Quite honestly, it was the speech in Davos where you took everything head on, and I think for me that's where a lot of the world changed. I think it opened a lot of eyes for Canadians, Albertans, Edmontonians, just how serious this national unity crisis truly is. And it's for me, it felt disingenuine and quite simply wrong to be sitting on the sidelines anymore. So I reached out to the Prime Minister's office and will be joining his caucus.
And then there were 3. Prime Minister Mark Carney was unsurprisingly all smiles today as he introduced a new member of his Liberal caucus. Alberta MP Matt Jeneroux is now the 3rd Conservative to cross the floor in as many months, joining Chris D'Entremont in November and Michael Maw in December. Back in November, there was a ton of speculation about Jeneroux potentially crossing the floor, but he ruled it out, saying he would quit politics altogether. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre at the time thanked Jeneroux for his service and said he would stay on as an MP until the spring. And Jeneroux at the time said the decision reflected his desire to spend more time with his family. That was then. This is now. We requested an interview with both Mr. Jeneroux and the Conservatives. Both, however, were declined. Instead, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's office directed us to a post he made on social media where he accused Jeneroux of betraying his constituents. He wrote, Mark Carney is trying to seize a costly Liberal majority government that Canadians voted against in the last election through dirty backroom deals. Matt Jeneroux has betrayed the people of Edmonton Riverbend, Poilievre wrote, who voted for affordable food and homes, safe streets, and a strong resource sector. Conservatives will continue our fight for a Canada that's affordable, safe, and self-reliant. So, what does all of this mean for both the Liberals and the Conservatives? Let's bring in a special edition of our strategy session. CTV political analyst Scott Reid is here. He's a former communications director to Prime Minister Paul Martin. CTV political analyst and former Conservative Industry Minister James Moore is with us. He's now a policy advisor at Edelman. And Kathleen Monk is a former director of communications to the late Jack Layton. She's now the principal owner of Monk & Associates. Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Good to see you. Scott, besides this revealing that nobody who's been married a long time actually wants to spend more time with their family, what does this tell you right now about the government and the strategy the Liberals are employing?
I think you're onto something. We should dwell on this marriage issue, but I mean, what this tells you is that Pierre Poilievre faces steep challenges still, and he went through the leadership review. We got a smashing endorsement, but it's been 3 months. 3 MPs have crossed the floor. And yes, he's going to say these are dirty backroom deals and it's a betrayal of constituents and all that sort of stuff. And I guess maybe that's to be expected, but none of it fixes his wagon. This is a punch to the gut for Pierre Poilievre. He has got to figure out how does he correct this ship. And at a point where his own MPs keep declaring non-confidence in his leadership, man, Canadians are left to wonder, why should we endorse it with our votes? And of course, they may not get that chance now because the pure math of this takes us to the possibility that if the Liberals win by-elections in Liberals they hold, they will have, by the thinnest, razor thinnest of margins, the majority that they hope for.
What do you think this means for Mr. Poilievre's leadership, James? And how do you expect or hope, I guess I would say, he addresses it?
Well, there's a truism in life, right? That no matter how bad things seem, it's always possible for things to get worse. It is actually possible for things to get worse. Scott talked about a majority. There's also the possibility that others may decide to go against the mandate that they got from their constituents and cross the floor. These things happen. I think it would be a mistake for the Conservative Party to do at least what it seems like they're doing on social media, which is going all in and attacking Matt Jeneroux personally. They praised Matt Jeneroux just a couple months ago when he decided not to cross the floor, and they said he was a good guy and honorable guy, a thoughtful guy, and now they're doing a 180. Look, Matt Jeneroux is 1/343rd of the House of Commons. He's one person. Yes, every seat has a consequence in a minority parliament, but your obligation as the alternative governing party in this country is to focus on the public's interest. And I would be very dispassionate about this if I were them strategically, and just say, Matt Jeneroux can be worried about his job. We're worried about the jobs of everyday Canadians who are worried about this economy that's not going in the right direction. I think if you overreact to this, I think you make a big mistake. By attacking and demonizing Chris d'Entremont, it didn't stop Mr. Ma from crossing the floor. By attacking Mr. Ma, it didn't stop Matt Jeneroux from crossing the floor. By attacking Matt Jeneroux, learn from the past. And I think overreacting and looking panicky about one member of parliament who obviously lost confidence in Pierre quite some time ago would be a strategic mistake. Focus on the country, focus on yourselves, and move forward, lest you bait others to want to cross the floor as well. Don't react the wrong way.
It is interesting that a few months ago, Matt Jeneroux was saying, Kathleen, that he was going to leave politics altogether. Therein lied an opening, I suppose, right, for either the Conservatives or the Liberals to secure the opposite, secure sort of a different outcome. The Liberals were able to do that, while the Conservatives were not.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Mr. Jeneroux's comments today is that he said he reached out to the Prime Minister post the Davos speech or whatever. But actually, you could look at this, if you want to be contrarian, you could almost try to look at this optimistically for Mr. Poilievre. I know people are going to believe Kathleen's going to say something nice about Mr. Poilievre, but listen, he wants to avoid an election. Right? We know that. So a majority, or getting closer to that majority for the Liberal government, would help him to have that time. The problem is he also at the same time has to fend off this narrative that is crystallizing around the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, that he is weak, that he is wounded, that he cannot get up off the mat. And the concern is now, with the rumors that are swirling, there are stories posted today about past Conservative MPs calling him the Justin Trudeau of the Conservative Party, that he's basically dead man walking. And if that continues to crystallize, it's going to be his caucus that actually will off their own leader, which they're able to do in the Conservative caucus. And that's the thing that he has to fight against. But if you want, again, to look at it optimistically, so what? Carney can, gets this majority by stealth, by wins the 3 next by-elections, or maybe more that come his way. And that, the Conservatives can continue to bide their time and wait for, some of the shine to come off the Liberals as the years click on and Carney continues to govern. And frankly, the economic situation, which is likely to get worse for Canadians.
Yeah, I do understand the argument, Scott, that, time could ultimately be on their side, particularly if things get less shiny. And it's not a guarantee, I should say, also, that the Liberals are going to sweep those by-elections, particularly in Quebec. That seems pretty competitive. Others are more obvious, for sure. But I think the second part of what Kathleen said is also very true, which is, even during that time, we can't assume that just because the shine wears off of the Carney government, that will be to the benefit of Pierre Poilievre. This narrative now, these questions about his leadership, didn't even just start coming today. It was yesterday when it was about Jamil Jivani, where he had to say, I speak for the party, Jamil Jivani does not. And today it's about, should you remain as leader? Tomorrow it's going to be the same thing. If there are more floor crossers, that does become a narrative that crystallizes.
Yeah, listen, I hear what Kathleen's saying, and I admire the variety she tosses into the panel by suggesting there's a contrarian piece of good news here for Mr. Poilievre. But I don't think he can use much more of this kind of good news. What, is a piano going to land on?
Yeah.
It turns out we all love music. Great for him. Look, for 12 months, people have said time is going to be his friend. It hasn't been so far. So he must seize his own destiny. Here's the brutal reality of it. I'll just say it as plain as possible. Right now, he looks like a loser. And if he doesn't start to look like a winner, he's never going to be a winner. And so he can have 2 months, he can have 20 months, he can have 200 months. He's got to get on a winning wicket fast. And right now he's not. And I just think, they need a strategy. He has not figured out how to talk about Donald Trump and the threats to Canadian sovereignty and Canadians' economic self-interest. He has not been able to bridge the gaps that exist within his own caucus and within his own party on those questions. People who like Trump and people who, with the majority of Canadians, say, I got no truck or trade with that guy. And now he's not only lost the election that he was supposed to win, lost the riding that was supposed to be a lock for him, lost now potentially the majority in the House of Commons. He's got to get to winning. Otherwise, he's done.
When Stephen
James,
Harper lost,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say when Stephen Harper Stephen Harper was unsuccessful in 2004, he faced a leadership review in the party. He got 84% of the vote. Pierre Poilievre lost the campaign last year, and he got 87% of the vote in the leadership review. What Stephen Harper did after he won his leadership review within the party is, frankly, he threw his weight around a little bit. He demanded some caucus discipline. He used that mandate that he got from the party members, and he called some people out, and he forced caucus discipline. He gave people caucus roles, and he said, if you're the agriculture critic, you're talking about agriculture issues. You don't go to the White House and talk about foreign policy and trade issues with the Vice President of the United States or the Secretary of State and wander around there and get out of your lane. No, he forced discipline, and he told members of our caucus and our shadow cabinet, if you want to be the cabinet, look like a cabinet when you're the shadow cabinet. Audition properly for the role by being proper executives in opposition, such that Canadians can see you in that role one day, perhaps in government. Pierre Poilievre has a stronger mandate to lead this party than Harper did after his leadership review after the 2004 loss. Right now, 87%. What's the point in having an 87% mandate if you don't throw your weight around a bit? I think it's time for Pierre to throw his weight around a little bit. Confront Jamil Jivani as he did yesterday, maybe a little more forcefully if he gets out of line again. And say to the members of the caucus who are still there, you're with me and you're with the party and we're moving forward, and show clarity and purpose and leadership and structure and discipline such that Canadians can say, this is a guy who actually wants to be prime minister. There's no point in having an 87% vote of confidence in a mandate if you don't use it. Why did you work so hard to get it if you don't use it? Maybe let's use it and move forward.
It does feel like a major point of inflection for Pierre Poilievre, right? He does have this mandate from his party. That was secured, but all this other stuff is going on, and it feels like there are a couple of different paths to go on, and ultimately whichever he chooses could seal his fate.
Yeah, but James is right. He does need to wield his power, and he can do so in some concrete ways, right? He could nominate some really star candidates, right? He could actually say there was a new policy that's just passed the convention where he's allowed to nominate, I think it's up to 8 candidates. So drop them in, get some stars, show some star power and some bench strength outside of the current Conservative caucus. Get that discipline. Start getting out of the House of Commons. We don't need to hear the quips in QP anymore. Get into those communities, roll out some important speeches, put out some strong policy papers. He needs to, frankly, use his power and marshal the enormous amount of fundraising dollars that he has and put those dollars to work. We're outside of an election period right now. They can do that. They've done that before. They did that in 2023 when they rolled out a major ad campaign in the summer of 2023, which resulted in a major surge for Pierre Poilievre. They could do things like that again, but it does seem that he's almost stunned and not moving. He's got a new campaign manager, very qualified, Steve Outhouse, but they need to get to work.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the analysis tonight. Scott Reed, James Moore, and Kathleen Monk, a special edition of our strategy session. CTV News also spoke to people who live in Matt Jeneroux's riding of Edmonton Riverbend about how they feel about him crossing the floor. Here's what they said.
I think he should go away. Like, the man's a coward. He's a liar.
Do you feel betrayed?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people here did not vote for a Liberal government, and that's who he's supporting.
I was delighted, absolutely delighted.
Right. Why is that?
Well, I voted Liberal in the last election, and obviously Mr. Jeneroux was elected here, and so I'm just pleased that he crossed the floor and we're that much closer to a majority government.
We've got a lot more coverage of this coming up tonight here on Power Play. First, though, after a short commercial break, as U.S. President Donald Trump weighs quitting CUSMA, a massive Canadian delegation is in Mexico to shore up bilateral trade. Prime Minister Mark Carney's Parliamentary Secretary Rachel Van Duyn is part of that delegation, and she's my next guest live from Mexico. Stay right there.
We've been looking at how much more money people have to spend because they're buying the normal bundle of goods that they need to survive, and how much money people have gained in the last year because incomes have gone up because of all of our great policies which are causing a business boom. And so the bottom line is that Trump policies are meant to onshore production and create jobs, and those jobs that we're creating are not for Jeff Bezos. They're for the people who didn't have a job before. And so they're by definition the people at the bottom. And our policies are working. They're very clearly working in the data.
Top White House officials continue to trumpet Donald Trump's tariffs, which are pushing up prices south of the border and creating massive economic instability on this side. It's against that backdrop that 370 Canadian delegates have descended on Mexico this week in Canada's biggest trade mission there in decades. Rachel Van Duyn is the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister and a part of that delegation in Mexico. She joins us live from, I believe, our embassy over there. Hi, Ms. Van Duyn. Good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
Buenas tardes. I am live from Mexico City. It's great to be here, Vashi.
I wish I still remembered enough Spanish to conduct this entire interview in that language. Unfortunately, everyone will have to settle for my English. Before we get into the mission, and I have a lot of questions for how it's going in trade between our two countries, I did want to get your reaction as parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister to the floor crossing, Matt Jeneroux coming over to your caucus. Mr. Poilievre says your party is trying to form a majority through quote-unquote backroom deals. Are you?
And I'm very pleased to receive a new member of our caucus. I think this is a time for the entire country to come together as members of the province of Alberta and Canadians. I think that we are going to obviously have a lot of interest in our party at the moment. I've been hearing it from Conservative members for some time now. I'm pleased to see Matt Jeneroux join our caucus.
Do you expect, based on those conversations, that there will be more?
I think that's up to other caucus members and members of parliament. We'll see. I am certainly focused on the work that we are doing in order to strengthen and diversify our economy. It's why I'm here in Mexico, and it is the focus of, I know, the Prime Minister and all of Cabinet.
And I promise I have lots of questions about that. I think the question about the majority, though, is central to that, right? Being able to advance the agenda that your government wants to pursue. Again, I'll just put to you, Mr. Poilievre's framing is that what you're trying to do is secure that majority, not through the democratic process, but instead through what he's terming backroom deals. Is that what your government is trying to do?
No, I think there are a number of by-elections that are coming up. We'll see what the results of those are. We do have the budget, which has a very strong plan in order to strengthen our economy, in order to double housing construction across the country. That budget is currently stuck as a result of Conservative tactics at Finance Committee. And so I hope that what we can do is eventually get to a majority in order to be able to pass the budget and the laws that I know Canadians have asked us for. But at the moment, we don't have one, and therefore we're looking to work with partners in opposition in order to advance our legislation.
I think that budget implementation bill is being negotiated because Minister McKinnon told us that it'll go back to the House when it resumes next week. Let's talk about the trip. Despite the presence of CUSMA, Canada only exported $8.6 billion of goods to Mexico in 2024. After your visit there over the last number of days, do you know why?
I think that there's a lot of opportunity here in Mexico still to be exploited. We've seen over the course of the last number of months since the Prime Minister was here and since he signed a strategic partnership with President Sheinbaum in September, a lot of interest in Canada. Over the course of the last number of days, we've announced upwards of, I think, 15 different deals between Canadian companies and Mexican companies. We've also seen significant foreign direct investment from Mexico into Canada. One deal in particular that I'm really excited about is a Mexican mining company that's going to invest somewhere in the range of $750 million in a mining operation in northern Quebec. We've also seen small deals. I was on the floor of the convention meeting with small business leaders and medium-sized businesses that were meeting both Canadian and Mexican partners very interested in working together. There was a Montreal company by the name of Accede that had just met with GE Vernova, which is GE's company here in Mexico. And he said, like 10 minutes ago, they just said, like, we're ready to sign. And I think that's what this trade mission is all about. You mentioned, the size of the trade mission is incredible, but also I feel the results are incredible.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if you can quantify those results. And I understand the anecdotal evidence in the instances of specific, deals, for example, that you're pointing to. But when I highlight the number around exports, it's because, we say, oh, Mexico's our third largest trading partner. It's under CUSMA. But if you compare it to China in that same year, there were $30 billion of Canadian goods exported to China, $600 billion of goods exported to the United States. Is there something structurally inhibiting Canadian businesses from being able to better take advantage of the opportunities that you just laid out? And is your government going to do something about it rather than just kind of like bring a lot of people there and say that you're going to do more?
Well, we're not just saying it, we're actually doing it. This money is going to flow in, the foreign direct investment that I mentioned. The contracts that our Canadian companies are signing with Mexican companies are joint ventures that are going to result in more exports from Canada to Mexico. Is there something structurally? I think structurally the matter is really that we've had the United States in between us geographically, and both countries have traditionally exported a very large amount to that partner. And now we are seeing that perhaps there is even more to do bilaterally between Canada and Mexico.
And on that note, I would say that I've watched with great interest, I think Canadians have in general, Mexico's approach to the United States versus Canada's. And I wonder if there is any conversation, or you've been a part of any conversation, I think you were in the meeting with President Sheinbaum, for example, around like how you navigate expanding trade with Mexico while also trying to keep CUSMA on the wheels and not to say that it's our fault that the U.S. is doing what it's doing. It's quite the opposite, but like not further antagonize someone who is just looking to be antagonized, basically.
Both Canada and Mexico are very committed to CUSMA. I think that the trilateral relationship in North America is extremely important. Our industries are deeply integrated, but our economies are also complementary one to the other. And so I know that Mexico is very keen on continuing with TMEC, as they call it here, as is Canada. We are all committed to ensuring a strong deal between the three countries in order to continue the free flow of people, goods, and services between our three countries here in North America. And as the geopolitical context shifts around the world, I think a very strong North America becomes even more important to all three countries.
Is your government fully committed to a trilateral approach in that vein? I ask because Jamieson Greer, the USTR, has in the last few days even been explicit that the United States intends to pursue that review on a bilateral basis. Is it the federal government's position to not accept that framing?
There have always been bilateral discussions between our countries, whether under then NAFTA or now CUSMA. We are absolutely committed to a trilateral arrangement between the three countries. I also think that there is a lot to do between Canada and Mexico in terms of trade. As you mentioned off the top, there are opportunities that have yet to be exploited. We can export more to Mexico for sure, which is why we are engaged very heavily in this trade mission. I mean, you saw the number of ministers that came on the delegation along with me and other parliamentarians in order to advance the relationship. You mentioned the meeting that we had with President Sheinbaum yesterday. It was an extremely constructive meeting. We addressed a number of issues, including the CUSMA review. We talked about how we can further foreign direct investment both ways. And I think that these conversations are very healthy. I know that Minister LeBlanc is in regular contact with Mr. Greer at the USTR, and that those are also positive conversations that he has indicated will continue.
Oh, I wasn't aware, actually, that those conversations were continuing in any regular fashion. There hasn't been much communication around that. And I do take your point that there are always going to be bilateral discussions. But the reason I ask specifically with this is because the U.S. has been so concrete about saying that basically they want to take a divide and conquer approach, at least where renegotiations or a review is concerned. It wasn't that long ago that then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau seemed to kind of waffle on whether or not that would be the case, and that Premier Ford was saying, let's just go it alone with the United States and not worry about Mexico. Am I to infer from your comments that no matter what, Canada is sticking with a trilateral review?
Well, it's hard for me to speak in the hypothetical when you say no matter what. At the moment, Canada's position is that a trilateral review is not only in Canada's interest, but also in the United States and Mexico's interest.
And then finally, when you talk about sort of what materializes out of this trip, I read some of the comments that Minister LeBlanc made heading into it, basically saying he expected something more concrete beyond what you've outlined here, but like more formalized agreements, let's say, on a bilateral basis 6 months from now. Is that still the case? And can you give Canadians watching, an idea of exactly what they should look for?
Well, we're building off of an agreement that was signed just a couple of months ago in September. Our trade mission here has been very successful, and we were welcomed really with open arms by President Sheinbaum, as you saw from some of the pictures of our meeting yesterday, which was significant. I also understand that Mexico is intending now to send a trade mission to Canada. They are very interested in also meeting with our pension funds and seeing how they could invest in Canada. And that's something that we are going to undertake in the next couple of months. So you'll certainly see that. I think that there is a lot more that we can do. And I certainly am very focused on this relationship in particular at the request of the Prime Minister.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Ms. Van Duyn, thanks a lot for making the time. I appreciate it, and safe travels.
Gracias. Thank you, Vashi.
Rachel Van Duyn is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. We'll take a short break here on Power Play, but after that break, back to our top story. The front bench will be here to talk about Matt Jeneroux crossing the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals. Sharon Carr, Sebastian Skamsky, Jamie Allerton, and Laura D'Angelo are right here in just a moment.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome to the government team. It's a great honor to be on the same team as you. Matt brings a wealth of experience.
For me, it felt disingenuine and quite simply wrong to be sitting on the sidelines anymore. So I reached out to the Prime Minister's office and will be joining his caucus.
3 floor crossers, 3 seats to a majority, 3 pending by-elections on the horizon. Alberta MP Matt Jeneroux has left the Conservatives to join the Liberals. He's the 3rd Conservative to cross the floor in as many months, joining Chris d'Entremont and Michael Ma. The Liberals are now at 169 seats in the House of Commons, 3 shy from a majority, though no closer than they were immediately after the April election. But there are currently 3 vacant seats in Parliament with pending by-elections. The 3 ridings were previously held by Liberals, including former Cabinet Ministers Chrystia Freeland and Bill Blair. And last week, the Supreme Court invalidated the federal election result in the Quebec riding of Terrebonne, where a Liberal MP had won by just a single vote. Now, the Prime Minister has not set a date for any of those races, but that is expected to happen soon. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was asked yesterday, before Matt Jeneroux crossed the floor, about the state of his Conservative caucus. Here's what he said.
There were leaks out of caucus last week, and then there's also this issue with Mr. Giovanni. I'm wondering how do you feel about how things are going in caucus?
Look, overall, I think we have a great team. We're the only party that's addressing the real issues that are affecting people's daily lives. And whether it's on affordability, the affordability of food, the safety on our streets, and the self-reliance of our economy, we have an incredible team of caucus members who have been fighting for those things, and we're going to keep doing that.
So what does this latest news mean for the future of both the Liberals and the Conservatives? Let's bring in our front bench. Sharon Carr is a CTV News political analyst. She's the former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Next to her, that's Sebastian Skamsky. He was Director of Media Relations to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Jamie Allerton is the principal at Canaptus and worked for Minister Jason Kenney during the Harper government. And with me here in studio is Laura D'Angelo. She is with Enterprise Canada and previously worked in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office. Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Started out as a slow day, Laura, turned into anything but. What does it tell you? I'm going to start kind of at an odd place. The fact that none of this leaked, that none of this was, even though there's been rampant speculation about this possibility occurring, that it was announced in the way it does. What does that tell you about the strategy being employed by the Liberals and the Prime Minister right now?
They've clearly learned their lesson from the floor crossers in late 2025, right? When we had d'Entremont kind of leak, Matt Jeneroux, it looked like he was going to cross, and then it leaked. But so clearly they've learned about how to keep this tight. The second part of the strategy, though, that I think is very clearly highlighted is they are actively pursuing floor crossers in a majority through this mechanism. And frankly, it also shows that they deeply understand the moment Canada is in, right? I think that the statement coming from Matt Jeneroux, the statement coming from the Prime Minister, MPs want to help Canada get to a majority so that we can try to get through this trade war and not have the constant back and forth. At least that's how it appears to me, and that's probably the strategy they're using to convince people.
It's interesting that in the past few weeks, the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre himself, Jamie, have gone to great lengths to kind of convince Canadians and I think political watchers that that they won't be standing in the way unnecessarily of that agenda advancing. Like, I've done a number of interviews, including with Andrew Scheer, where he made it abundantly clear, I think exactly a week ago, that they did not intend that to be the case. Whatever that message was did not seem to translate to Matt Jeneroux.
Yeah, I think the curious case around Matt Jeneroux is going to have a lot of people's head scratching. I'm not sure any of the parties involved really come out looking great about it all. I think this is the part of politics that makes people incredibly cynical. But I also think when you look at where Matt Jeneroux was back in November, the fact that he almost crossed the floor and essentially had to be pleaded not to, and then 2 months later, 3 months later, went ahead and did it anyways. This is just further momentum for Prime Minister Carney, even if it is a bit messy as how he's going about it. I think the Conservative response kind of shows you where the spurn and how they're feeling about all of this. And I frankly just don't think they actually know if there's going to be more. And which is why I think you're continuing to try to see them going back to the original playbook they tried with Chris May, which is to go scorched earth and try and make an example of them, make the person who did leave feel some personal animosity as a result of it, while trying to bridge back to a message about affordability that's kind of getting lost in the vitriol that's being launched at RAT.
Sharon, I'll throw the question of whether they're going to be more over to you. Maybe maybe you can shed some light. It certainly feels like that is the case, at least that there are more people, to Laura's point, being targeted.
So whether it's targeted or whether people are reaching out, I would say it could be a variety of any. But yeah, there's a lot of talk and a lot of rumors and speculations and names that are floating around with up to several more members who might cross the floor from the CPC. But we have to ask ourselves why. We saw the flurry that came out of the speculation back in the fall, and then eventually when Matt Jeneroux did say he was going to resign, and we've heard all the speculation that was going on out there. And if anything was a clear reason as to why people are walking away from the party, just look at the response coming out of people like Pierre Poilievre, coming out of members of his caucus, coming out of their social media influencer gang that's out there. Nothing about this says, come be part of our tent. We welcome all, and we welcome you to be part of us. It is showing the hate. It is showing the dismissiveness around what people think. And I've said this before, the Conservative Party often operates on fear and hate, and I get a lot of slack from people online to say that's not true. Just go on social media networks today to see what people are saying about Mr. Jeneroux. Whereas the Liberal Party has welcomed him with open arms, he is not a hyper-partisan. He is someone who's thoughtful, cares deeply about things like men's mental health. And you know what? He's welcoming a party that's not going to spew hate at him.
Well, the perfect person to respond to that is sitting right next to you, and I'll give you the floor, Sebastian, to do just that.
I'm not really sure what Sharon expects Conservatives to do. Obviously, this is someone who is leaving and betraying our team. I'm not sure if we're expected to applaud and be happy at that. Of course, the Liberals are thrilled that an opportunist and a careerist is joining their ranks. He will fit right in with Prime Minister Carney in doing what they do best, which is doing a lot of talk and very little actual doing. This is a member of Parliament who has not shown up to Parliament, which is where his job is, since November. He has not really cast any votes. So I'm sure the Liberal caucus will be proud of that important record when he is an advisor to the Prime Minister. I think on this, obviously, this is not a great thing to have happened, but I think we need need to look at this in the context of the individuals in question, as we did with Mr. D'Entremont, as we did with Mr. Ma, and recognize that these are decisions that are entirely based in advancing their own careers and their own opportunities ahead of those of their constituents, which regrettably are put at a loss here. They're not represented in the case of Mr. Jeneroux at all because of his absence, but they're not represented by someone they voted for, and their hopes and their aspirations to have a better country are have fallen really on deaf ears.
Look, I very much understand feelings of betrayal that people who just a number of months ago voted for these MPs would feel. I even understand Conservatives saying, like, what the heck, we thought you were on our team. But the thing is, when it's just one, then the focus can be on the individual. When it's two, maybe even then a discussion. When it's three and potentially more, I think necessarily so, like any objective reporter, just as we scrutinized Justin Trudeau when people were calling out his own leadership, like the story becomes Mr. Poilievre's leadership, Laura.
The story is absolutely Mr. Poilievre's leadership. This is 3 floor crossers and Jamil Jivani going down to the U.S., frankly, making Pierre Poilievre look quite weak. Whether that comes to he didn't know that Jamil Jivani was going down, he didn't know what was happening, and also he hasn't sort of publicly reprimanded him or publicly dealt with him in a way that would indicate he has control over Caucus right now. And that is also raising questions. I think when you add on the rumors that there are more coming, and I think a lot of the sort of chattering classes learned their lesson in the fall with such rampant rumors, they don't feel like giddy rumors right now. They feel a little bit more credible. When you start to hear that, the question has to be, why did Pierre Poilievre win 87% at his leadership review, drive so hard for that, and he's not using that political capital now to make sure his caucus is falling in line and showing themselves to be the governing party they want to be?
Do you think caucus is an issue, Jamie? And what do you think, if there is a way, what is the way out of this narrative for the leader of the Conservative Party?
Yeah, actually, let's be real about this. I think there is a wide variety of opinions in that Conservative caucus as to what the party should be doing right now in this minority parliament. There is a wide diversity of opinion as to how resolute the party should be in doubling down on Conservative principles and being bombastic and unapologetic, and kind of letting the dislike for all things Liberal define the party's personality and how it talks to Canadians. And there are those that kind of also want to see some real tangible actions that look at things like the MOU with the province of Alberta and say, hey, how can we actually put more pressure on the government to expedite this? Because we're supposed to be in a wartime effort and we're a year later. And although there's been a lot of agreements and a lot of bigger picture stuff that we've talked about on the show, and Laura's like called out the reality of like those are longer term payoffs for the country and then by extension for the prime minister with a lot of politics before that gets realized, the Conservatives could be pushing more pressure on that to get the government to act. I think if you look at the reality of what the Conservatives and Liberals agree on, you could have a supermajority really move fast on a lot of these things, but it's not happening. And so I think there is going to be that real division. I think when you look at Pierre Poilievre's leadership, up until last month, he was focused, yes, in doing his job and holding the government on a day-to-day account, but his real job was keeping his job as leader of the opposition and getting through that review out at the convention. And so I think right now what you saw coming out of that convention was trying to see more positioning for how he's going to meet the moment, work with the government and make this a productive parliament. And the kind of overtures that you've heard Andrew Scheer, of all people, saying nice things about Liberals on your show. How often have you heard that over the years? All that kind of gets thrown out the window today with his vitriolic response to Matt Jeneroux crossing the floor. And I think the caucus and the party is in disarray. I don't think they know what next steps are. I don't think they know when the next election is going to be. They don't know what the frame is going to be. And so there's got to be some appetite for risk and experimentation for what the Conservative narrative is. There needs to be, I think, parameters for a diversity of voices within the Conservative caucus to come forward. But I think the Conservative caucus then needs to be more coordinated in how they're expressing that diversity and do so constructively. Because right now it looks like the left hand's not talking to the right hand, and Pierre Poilievre's left holding the bag, looking awkward, mugging for the cameras.
Yeah, that's the thing. The diversity of views has always been something that's hard for a leader to kind of navigate, right? Sharon, particularly at a moment when your own leadership is in question, that diversity of views, it feels more like a hindrance right now than a help.
Well, especially for someone like Pierre Poilievre, who's made his tent so big, appealing to extremely right-wing views. And, you know, if I were him and drafting a statement that was supposed to go out today, I would have taken the statesly approach to this, something you would see from people like the Brian Mulrooney's out there, where it would thank Matt for his time. And you know what? Elections are elections. I want to remind and emphasize people of one thing. There's a lot of talk from Pierre Poilievre, his caucus, around this being a betrayal. There are 85,000 and change eligible voters in that riding. Matt Jeneroux, as a Conservative candidate, won by 30,000 and change. The Liberal candidate won by 27,000 and change. So any argument to say that this is a betrayal to the Conservatives who voted him, guess what? There's 85,000 people who are eligible to vote in that riding, and the majority of them did not vote for Pierre Poilievre. So elections matter, and we'll see where that goes next. But this is what happens when your tent is so big, you don't know what to say.
Vashti, if I can quickly on that, we have 343 members of parliament. They all have their seat in the House of Commons. They are first among equals. And the voters of that riding will ultimately get to decide. And the floor crossings aren't new. And the kind of parliamentary privilege that MPs enjoy is something that's actually a strength of our system, not top-down leader politics trying to further undermine Parliament's credibility and ability to function.
Yeah, floor crossings have happened many times. I've listened to both parties kind of say this is the end of the world and not. I've also, though, I benefit from hosting a radio show where I do hear from people, some of whom understood today, for example, that the idea that there might be something bigger at play here, right, in the crisis we face. But some also who did feel very much like, what is the point of my vote if something like this happens? So I do understand the validity of that perspective as expressed by voters. I don't think we can dismiss it offhand. At the same time, to pretend, Sebastian, like floor crossing is, moral sort of, you're aghast morally when every single party has accepted floor crossers is also a bit rich.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if we used Sharon's definition of election results, Andrew Scheer could make the case that he should have been prime minister in 2019 for having won the electoral votes across the country. Listen. I think this is patently obvious that this was a self-motivated move. This is somebody who announced that they wanted to spend more time with their family in November, only to watch a speech from Davos, as we are led to believe, 3 weeks ago, and determine 3 weeks later that now is the time to join the governing team. I think most Canadians are rightfully rolling their eyes at this very poor theatre performance on the part of Mr. Jeneroux. And I think most Canadians recognize that they're being taken along for a ride with this. The voters of that riding voted for Mr. Jeneroux for 4 times when he ran as a Conservative. He has never promoted Liberal principles or policies. He's not advocated for them when he was asking for their votes. And they didn't give him that mandate. And I think that frustration is real. It is real whether it's in Edmonton or in any other part of the country. And I think what Mr. Poilievre is underlining in his statement about this is that while these things happen, he will remain the champion of those people who are largely voiceless in our country and who are struggling to get by, and he'll continue to advocate for them.
What riding is Pierre?
I'm just grateful that I get your... I'm just grateful I still get everyone's facial expressions. I got to leave it there, guys. Thanks a lot. Appreciate a great discussion, as always. Our front bench, Jamie Ellerton, Sharon Carr, Sebastian Skamsky, and Laura D'Angelo. We'll take a quick break, but after that break, it's not inherently political. It is, however, big news. The Canadian men's hockey team has secured its place in the semifinal after a thrilling overtime win against Czechia. CTV's Heather Butts reports for us from Milan next. Welcome back to Power Play. It was a nail-biter of a game, but the Canadian men's hockey team has secured its place in the semifinal in a thrilling overtime win against Czechia this afternoon. Mitch Marner found the back of the net to clinch the win. The team now has to wait to see who they'll face in the semifinals. CTV's Heather Butts is in Milan and spoke with fans at a bar about their reaction to the win.
To call that a nail-biter would be an understatement. Canadians were holding their breath, not just at home, but right here in Italy. I'm outside a bar in Milan, which has become the unofficial Canada House. This place is packed during big events during these Olympic Games, and tonight was no different. Everyone was spread out onto the street. It was standing room only. Everyone holding their breath that entire game. Fans telling me it was tied for far too long, making them feel a little uncomfortable. But many people here tonight told me they had faith. They knew the Canadians were going to pull through. They were worried, of course, when Sidney Crosby left the game with that injury. But then Mitch Marner pulls through with that overtime goal. Here's what fans had to say.
Feeling such a relief when that score came at the last minute. And yeah, it was very, very stressful. Didn't expect that. It was supposed to be an easy game, and it was not.
The fans here are awesome. Like the atmosphere in the bar here is almost all Canadians. It was just the best day ever.
You could feel that everyone was super nervous, but also really weirdly, I feel like we all kind of knew that Canada was going to pull it out, especially when they went to overtime, 3-on-3. That's our game. My friend here, Laura, called it in the second period. She's like, Marner's got the next one, and he did it. It's amazing.
So Canada's men's team avoided a historic upset. They'll play in the semifinals on Friday, but Canada cannot breathe a sigh of relief just yet. All attention will turn to Canada's women's hockey team. They play in that gold medal game tomorrow against the United States.
That's our Heather Butts reporting from Milan. Our takeaway is next. Stay right there. Welcome back to Power Play and our takeaway, which is, of course, all about our top story, Conservative MP, formerly Conservative MP Matt Jeneroux's decision to move from the Conservatives over to the Liberals, the third MP from the Conservatives to do so in the last 3 months. Pierre Poilievre writing on social media, Mark Carney is trying to seize a costly Liberal majority government that Canadians voted against in the last election through dirty backroom deals. Dominic LeBlanc is in Mexico. He's the minister in charge of North American trade. He was just asked by reporters about those comments from Pierre Poilievre. Here's what he said in response.
He should look in the mirror and ask himself why he's having these challenges in his caucus. It's easy to somehow make up a phrase like backroom deals. He would be the expert in that sort of stuff. If his caucus members choose to leave his caucus, he can explain that.
So Matt Jeneroux becomes the third MP from the Conservatives to cross the floor. Before him, Michael Mah in December. And before that, on Budget Day, Chris d'Entremont. There is, of course, a lot of speculation that there could be more. Lots of questions swirling in that vein. You'll have to stay tuned to find out if that is the case. I'm going to leave Power Play there. I'm Vashi Capellas. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.